Hi, I'm Juliana Cassavan. I'm with the Purdue Foundry. My primary role is working with faculty startups at the university. And then I joined the SGCI staff to work on the Incubator program and be one of the instructors for the boot camp. So I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves very quickly, just so you know their institution and their gateway. But really, I'm going to talk a little bit just about the boot camp itself and how that works. And then we're going to have our four panelists actually present about their gateway. So you'll get to hear a little bit about each of their gateways and kind of the incubator and the boot camp was a useful exercise, hopefully, right? Right. So Sean, if you want to start us off.
Sure. I'm Sean Cleveland from the University of Hawaii, and our project was the EKY Gateway.
Guess we're standing up. Nancy Hobel-Heinrich, Knowledge Motifs, LLC from San Mateo, California, and I'm with the Data Management Training Clearinghouse Gateway.
I'm Anna Maria Eschrich, and our project is a 3D EM electron microscopy portal that we are in the process of building. We're still in our infancy stages, and I'm with the University of Texas at Austin.
I'm Cameron Craddock. I'm at the University of Texas, Dell Medical School, and my gateway is called NiCloud.
Great. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of the boot camp and how it works. So we bring about 10 teams that are currently working on gateways, and they could be in any varying stage of development. So some of them are at the idea level, where they are just starting to think about their gateway and what it is that they want to develop. Some of them are fully deployed and being used by lots of people. So it really is useful for people to be thinking about the sustainability of their gateway, no matter the level of development that they're currently in. So this was our Bootcamp 3 that happened here at TAC. We've now actually conducted 4 boot camps. So I think all of you were, well, no, 3 of you were from this boot camp, and then Nancy was from Bootcamp 2, right, which was in, where were we? In Indianapolis, yeah, okay, yeah. So we have a group of instructors. This gives you an idea of just what the setup really looks like for it. So it's a very hands-on, intensive, interactive workshop. We try to do as little talking as possible, but we have a group of instructors that provides information and exercises in different areas. So one that we start with is effective communication to your stakeholders. So how do you talk about your gateway to people who aren't in your specific scientific area, and help them understand the value of what it is that you're trying to do. We also evaluate users and potential market segments and opportunities of where you could find people who need access to your gateway, need the resource. Funding models, so how are you going to be sustainable? Obviously, the bootcamp is all about figuring out what sustainability might look like for your gateway. So of course, we want to be evaluating the different funding model opportunities that are available. And we also do some exercises on usability and things like that. So lots of different instructors involved. But really the goal is for the instructors to kind of teach something. And then we do an immediate application of that teaching. So we talk about an exercise, we talk about customer segmentation or market segmentation, and then we actually have the participants get right up on whiteboards or the big sticky pads that are all over the place, and apply that exercise directly to their gateway. So it's very hands-on. All of the work that's being done is about your current gateway. So it's not theory, it's not any of that, right? We're talking about immediate application here. Then what we do is the attendees get group feedback. So they get to talk about what it is that they might have just figured out, or what ideas are they considering for these areas. So we do a napkin drawing right at the beginning, which is about the effective communication. And then we have all of the participants go around and share that napkin drawing. So you'll see some of those and maybe hear some insight on these exercises. But this is what it looks like really throughout the entire 5 days. It's interactive. It's the teams with the gateways actually presenting to each other and getting feedback from their colleagues. So the last bit of it is this idea of lessons learned. So on the final day, we have each team present what we call the pitch deck alpha. So it's a quick presentation on what did they learn, what kind of decisions have been made, what things are they thinking about exploring when they get back. Have they identified, their market fit, where they think their best opportunity might be, or what those potential funding models could look like. So each team has about 7 minutes or so to get up and present that at the end. So it's a really good way to wrap it up, and we make them actually commit to some goals. So these guys are going to be sharing with you their goals and whether or not they've been reaching them in their coming months. So it's a 3-month goal. We ask for 3 of them, and then 6-month goals. And we follow up to see how are things going? How can we be helping you reach those goals that you set out to achieve at the end of the boot camp? So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them, because that's I think, real exciting part is hearing the work that each of them have been doing with their gateway and their experience in the boot camp. So first up, we have Sean.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the EQI Gateway here. So, aloha. So, Ike means knowledge in Hawaiian, and Y means water. So, this is a water knowledge gateway. The whole concept here is trying to aggregate and find all of these different pieces of data that are sort of surrounding water in Hawaii. The reason we want to do this is there are impacts of climate change. There are like, for instance, a few years ago, about 1 million gallons of jet fuel leaked out of some tankers that were buried in the ground and into the groundwater, and nobody could find it anywhere. So we don't know how some of the aquifers are connected, like where that stuff would flow, like who was getting that water. So there's some issues there. Growth and sustainability, as you build more, as more people come to Hawaii, as tourism increases, do we have enough water to be able to support that thing? So a lot of people are passionate about water. And so that's one of the reasons behind the gateway. So like I said, all these different pieces of data here on the left are going to be going into this gateway. So we're trying to aggregate and make access to these pieces of data easier for the researchers at the top. So provide them that data, the tools and software that they need, along with computation, to be able to analyze that data, to create new knowledge products, improve on the water models that we have, maybe build some new models, new knowledge products about the information that feed back into our gateway, so that our water managers can look at that data, look at some of the decision support tools that also come off of the gateway, and make better decisions about how they want to manage the water and inform our policymakers about policies that are going to impact the usage of water. So our value proposition is our gateway will provide Hawaii's water resource managers with better tools, better well-curated data, so that they can make science-informed decisions. So the way we looked at our current market landscape is we looked at the different tools that are out there, and we also looked at some of the different data surrounding water in Hawaii. Every time I think you do this, you want to end up sort of in the upper right corner if your product is really good, and so that's where we put ourselves. I think HydroShare is probably the closest existing resource for being able to combine data and tools for doing. So we're really focused on Hawaii, so that's why we're moving ourselves up into that upper right corner, because all our data is about Hawaii. We want to bring in some of the dark data that some of the other state agencies and things that aren't agencies, groups that have access to some of this water are. So target audience, so state agencies are also obviously people who are interested in some of this data. Our water resource managers are interested in these tools. Our EKY researchers are some of the first people who are using our gateway. So our gateway is geared towards allowing them to do research with this data. What they care about is sort of the data quality, the ease of access to the data, the tools and features that can enable their science and being able to do things faster. So currently we have about 10 state agencies that we're working with that are interested in this information. We have about 40 to 50 researchers, including graduate students and postdocs. Our researchers and USGS are sort of the early adopters of this tool. And then we have our data segment of the community that is obviously interested in water, and then the wider hydrology community. So our financial model, we want to supplement with grants, other gateway grants. We're looking in-kind support from our institution. Also, the state legislature agencies are all interested in this information, this stuff. So we're going to be looking for support for them. If we can build a tool that's better than some of the existing tools, they're going to support us. And we're also looking at doing things like hackathons to get outreach and support from maybe sponsors and things. So our 3-month goals were to go live, have some usability evangelist testing and training, supplement our with apply for some grants to get supplement to our existing funding. And then at 6 months, we wanted to present to agency audiences, present to campus audience, and generate marketing materials. So mahalo for that. Did you want me to do updates or we do that later?
Yeah, if you want to do your updates, yeah.
Oh, okay. So where we did go live, we went live. We're live. So we have people using the gateway. Yay. Usability testing, we've had about 3 or 4 usability events, and we did get some information about doing that at the boot camp, so that was super helpful. And we do have an engagement with SGCI for doing UX usability testing. Supplement grant stuff, we are in the process of writing some of those things right now, so we are sort of on the way. Agency stuff is coming up for presenting. We have some scheduled stuff to present to campus audience, and we are working on websites and marketing materials, so we have made some progress.
Very good. Any questions for Sean? I think I'm supposed to give you this thing.
Measurements for effectiveness. So one of the things is going to be, I think, to some of our resources, is a lot of it is going to be, so there's a lot of personal relationships and interactions that go on with being able to work with the community and the agencies. So we have a lot of outreach people who are specific for working with the Hawaiian community, so Native Hawaiians and things like that. Like, this is a very important, sensitive, water is very sensitive for that sort of thing. So we have some particular folks that are doing outreach and things like that. So there's a lot of, like soft skill things. So it's going to be measurement of relationships and things like that. They're going to be success. Funding is going to be a big measure of success, I think. So that's sort of where some of our metrics are, I think, right now. Gateway usage statistics, like, we'll be gathering those, so we'll see where those are, and we'll start, evaluating those things as well. So.
All right, great. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hand it over to Nancy. So Nancy's going to present her deck, and then we'll take some questions.
Hello, Nancy Hobel-Heinrich, Knowledge Motifs. So I came to the second boot camp with my partner at the Earth Science Information Partnership, with which we were, this Clearinghouse is first started. So she and I were the team, and it was excellent to have her there as well, since I had been ESIP had sort of started with the idea, supporting this idea, but it was kind of separated a little bit. It was one of those things that was a test environment and then started really getting some legs, but it helped a lot to have Erin be there as well. So that is a really great part of the boot camp. But anyway, this is what we actually have is a data management education clearinghouse. That we started with the clearinghouse, it already existed, and we were interested in moving it beyond a registry of metadata, and I'll show you what it is actually, into more of a gateway or portal environment. So this is the home page of the clearinghouse at this point still. So as I said, we were interested in moving it from a simple registry to more services. The ESIP is there, the URL is there. So from a napkin drawing point of view, the web portal itself is, what we've got. It's a content registry of metadata about existing educational resources related to research data management was the main focus. So our target, our 2 different constituents that we were looking for were researchers who are either self-taught on research data management topics or data skills. They need to develop some data skills, or they're trying to find other people who can help them. So if you're starting to look as a researcher, your main interest is to do research, right? Not to find information about training on skills that you need to have. So you'd ask the question, who else is doing this? Oh, there's so many choices. How can I figure out what is right for me? So that is one audience, and then the other group of people who are could look to this repository or this clearinghouse are people who are providing that training, either in a lab or classroom environment or one-on-one, and then the self-taught researcher is looking for him or herself as well. So the capability of the clearinghouse is to provide very simply search, browse, and submit resources to that are in a searchable environment. So our target audiences, as I said, were research data management learners, academic researchers and their teams who want to learn just what they need to know, just when they need to know it, and then independent and government researchers who create and provide data. And on the other hand, the second target audience were the contributors. So key segments, key people within the science research data communities whose job it is to teach about data management. So maybe the people on the PI team, the research team who know about data science but want to teach it to others and don't want to do that as quickly as possible without changing their, what they're actually doing, what their job is. Academic and government data librarians are also often doing this in academic environments, and then data science educators as well. So the value proposition, this is the form that we got it from in the boot camp. The Science Gateway to Data Management Education will help science researchers to find, use, and recommend specialized and targeted learning resources on research data management by searching and browsing the Clearinghouse and using the recommender, ranking, and learning facility services of the Gateway. So that was what we were trying to do for the researchers, and for the contributor, the Science Gateway would help research science educators to find, use, and share and get credit for specialized educational content on RD research data management by contributing or submitting to the Clearinghouse. So the functionality that was there at the beginning when we first went to the boot camp was to, as I say, to provide search, browse, metadata submission, had some sense of the user profiles who were using it, a limited capacity for efficient editorial review, because these are all curated or vetted resources, and a minimal security on the portal itself, minimal built-in usage metrics based on Google Analytics. The whole Clearinghouse at this point still is actually on a Drupal-based content management environment. So it was a built-in capability for that that ESIP provided as part of their infrastructure. So what we wanted to do, though, by moving into a gateway was to get better security options for spamming and for more advanced metrics, and then add other mechanisms that were part of that value proposition, allowing users to annotate and rank resources based on an embedded community-built assessment framework. So by means of a framework, people who use the resources could tell us how the resources that they used worked for them in their particular environment. Facilitate the curation of resources by using different gap analyses and gathering user analytics, creating customized lists of resources from the inventory, provide real-time educational offerings. So for instance, if you've got code and coffee kind of settings where people are providing, on-site help, office hours, you can do that in an online environment as well, and that was something we'd love to do. And then improve the efficiency of the internal process of editorial review. So our 3-month goals starting in October were to plan and prepare and implement awareness and usability testing of what we already had at AG. We did that at AGU, or we planned it. We didn't get a lot of response at AGU because there was so much going on. But we have the plan ready. We increased the inventory in the portal, resources in the portal by 25 to 50% within the 3 months. And we started developing an awareness and a marketing plan and to raise awareness so that people care, because that was the thing we came up with. So this is here great. What happens if it goes away? Why do people care? So those are the goals. And then 6-month goals were to identify, invite, and plan a face-to-face meeting for potential advisory board members. We want to involve the community and set up an advisory board. Adapt that usability testing framework to use it at the ESIP winter meeting, which happens in January of every year. So AGU is in December of a year, and ESIP is in January. So we wanted to use what we learned there to that meeting, and then explore options for moving from the current hosting infrastructure to Hub0 infrastructure, because of the Drupal environment itself is kind of heavy, and ESIP was in the process of looking to change anyway. So let's see, I think what I've done here, do you want me to address the goal specifically that okay, or just do this. So what has happened since October is that we found some funding. I didn't put up yeah, no kidding. We didn't put up the little circle of, what we were going to do for funding, because it was all grant, or it was all unknown, TBD. But we did manage to get some funding. We found a partner with the University of New Mexico to seek funding, and got a 3-year national leadership grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, which is woohoo. which will move us toward our goal. That's for 2018, this year, to 3 years hence, 2021. And what we'll be able to do with that is to add some of these functionalities that were on our list of desired. So the big stars mean, yes, we can do it completely, we hope. And the small stars mean kinda, sorta. So we do have a group that's starting to work on the community assessment framework. We do have a better idea of what the gaps are by virtue of other groups we've been working with, and I can talk about that in a second. We have ideas about how to do real-time educational offerings. It's more of a resource that's recorded at the moment rather than live, so that's not as much as we want yet. And then we've started improving the efficiency of editorial review processes by getting a graduate student to help us do it. Yay, graduate students. Anyway, so what else has happened? We found a lot of new collaborative partners. We started working with AGU more carefully, which is the American Geophysical Union, for those who don't know. And then the Research Data Alliance is an international organization that works on research data issues. We're partners with a joint project between our AGU, RDA, and ESIP on enabling FAIR principles, the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable principles for research data. Also started working with some Australian Research Data Commons, because they are part of RDA and they're involved in ESIP and so on, and really involved in research data management training. And the number of other US research libraries who are part of our advisory group, which we have formed. And then also the European Commission has a Go Fair project where they're also working with researchers to provide training on RDM, I'm calling it. And then we also had, as part of the Enabling Fair project, we had 2 crowdsourcing events that were a blast to actually find resources that could be submitted for one event. And the second one was to map those resources that we found to the FAIR principles, both of which were successful. The latter one less so, because people don't necessarily have an idea of what the FAIR principles are or how you would map them. But it still helped really broaden the approach, broaden the awareness, and move that forward. And then we really expanded the reach from US-centric to include these other organizations, more than doubled the size of the inventory, and really started diversifying the science and social science disciplines. So what we want to do is keep things, what do? We kept things simple and looked for incremental progress. We broadened the scope to include training not only on research data management, but on data science skills, data skills as well, anything that's part of the whole research data lifecycle. We jumped to help on the Align projects, as I mentioned, and found dedicated partners who really believe in the need and approach and help to spread the word, and seem to find the right market niche. This is another slide from the boot camp. We needed to develop our market for our contributors. This is for contributors. So as you can see, we've got, with the little green X's, data repositories, academic librarians were some key contributors for us. The red, and the most likely people, and then the ones who were possible competitors were in the red, tool developers, commercial environments, etc. So I think what we came up with, we were right in the data repositories, the data and the academic librarians, involving some of those organizations, as you can see there on that line, who are part of those. But what was interesting was that we found that tool developers are not competitors, but real contributors here, because there's so many tool developers are working to help move forward that whole research data lifecycle, that they really saw the marketing value of putting their kinds of things into the clearinghouse if they had tutorials and so on already. Okay, and including software and data carpentry and library carpentry. And so now what's next? We want to fulfill our existing obligations for the grant. We're continuing to look for long-term funding, especially for the infrastructure questions that we have, continue to find gaps, expand the rewards for the contributors and content users, and keep our eyes out for collaborators. So if you're interested, let me know.
Great,
Yep.
great. Any questions for Nancy? Questions. All right.
Can I have one more thing to say? I did put this up, but the question about metrics was an interesting one. I wanted to just address that for here. We're in the process of trying to figure out, again, why people care in terms of metrics. So we're looking at the metrics still on the Drupal environment, but But the fact that people are interested in, and we don't have numbers per se, we're in the process of finding numbers. The thing that will be an interesting metric is because we are putting in resources, in metadata about resources that exist somewhere else, we're looking to see if there's a way to find out how many times, you know, the fact that a resource was downloaded from the other place because of a referral from us will be really interesting, I think, for us and for that place. Now, if anybody knows how to do that, we're trying to figure out how to do that, but that's.
From our repositories or data GOIs were reused when they went from the paper publication to the data GOI and tracked it. So Web of Science is something.
Yeah, these don't have DOIs as a problem, but there may be, that whole mechanism might be, we'll talk.
All right.
Great, thanks.
Great. Thanks,
Oh,
Nancy.
sorry.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Anna Marie. If you want to, yeah, if you just click to the next one, that's you. Oh, I think it was on already.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to be here today and sharing our experiences with the boot camp. So I was with Sean and Cameron, number 3, that was held here in Austin in May of this past spring. And then before I really start diving in to the presentation, I think the biggest benefit for me for attending the boot camp was learning more about what gateways are, because I did an entire career shift. So this was completely new to me and I didn't know quite what to expect out of the boot camp. And the second most invaluable was being able to sit down with some of my team members and actually work through all the exercises. And I'll be the first to admit I do not like role playing and I do not like standing up and doing all the exercises, but they were so invaluable. And by the end of the week, I felt like I had gained so much knowledge to be able to proceed and help facilitate our project even better. And I did learn a lot, because the first day when I stepped in and they asked us, what can you contribute? I go, oh. But by the end of the week, I felt a lot more confident that I was able to contribute more. So with that, James Carson is over here at TAC, and Joe Allen is also part of TAC, but is located in Houston. They were 2 of my team members. And until the very first day, I had never met Joe, and I didn't realize he was on our project. So it was, again, very valuable to be able to sit down and speak with everyone. This is our napkin drawing. Essentially, our project is we have all these 3D images of the hippocampus within the brain, and we do a lot of research. And what we're trying to do is provide a platform for neuroscientists, students, educators, be able to retrieve images, prove their hypotheses, collaborate, and have just an open space for everybody to share their knowledge, be able to help each other out, especially since neurobiology is a narrow field, and just be able to provide our images and then also use the platform to analyze the data. So our value proposition is that the 3D electron microscopy discovery environment will help neuroscientists speed up time to discovery by providing a collaborative online workspace to manage and analyze 3D EM brain data. And this took us almost the entire week to come up with and to refine. So again, those exercises really do help, and it really helps with the brainstorming and just figuring things out. So again, like Sean stated earlier, we want to be up in the top right-hand corner again. And right now we do have, there's a lot of tools out there to help with the analyses, but they're not as efficient and as quick as what we hope that our portal will be able to provide to the neuroscientists. Our target audience, again, neuroscientists are the researchers. We also have the different institutions that are going to be involved. the foundations and agencies, such as NSF is providing us the funding to start this project, which I did not acknowledge on the slide, and I apologize for that oversight. And then we want to partner with industry partners just to improve and provide data that others might not have the ability to provide. Oh, there we go. The financial model currently, as I stated, we're being funded by a grant. And as everybody knows, grants do run out of money. So we are hoping to fulfill a lot more of the sustainability, and this is, still a lot of brainstorming going on and discussions. But some of the ideas that we came up with was, in addition to requesting or submitting more grants, we also are looking at maybe doing a very small fee to use to be able to sustain it, because just with all the technology changing, we need to be able to upgrade our technology, upgrade the hardware, software, as they become presented. So we do need to look at sustainability into the future. So our 3-month goals were to do a soft launch, upload the first 10 terabytes of data, perform needs assessment, and then the 6-month goals was to expand the access to certain research labs, incorporate and complete analyses in the workflow, and provide a set of usability and functional tests. So to date, we have done a soft launch, and we are currently testing a lot of the data sets. We have uploaded our first couple of terabytes of images. And we did encounter one obstacle that we're still in the process of trying to figure out. Well, most likely have to incorporate into our workflow, and that's the speed is very slow to get all these images up. Even though we're just right down the road at the main campus of UT Austin, the upload speed to TAC has been a little bit challenging. We've completed our first workshop, which kind of also provided some feedback of what users are actually wanting to see as well, and that has helped us. And we have invited 2 other research labs currently to start accessing the images and using some of the analyses tools on the portal. And that is about where we stand right now. So we are still doing a lot of performance, usability, and functionality testing within the portal, and trying to get it more interactive is kind of where we're currently at for our milestones. So thank you. Any questions? I think that, yeah.
I'm going to get in trouble if I don't use this thing. So I probably need to go ahead and do it. Let's see if I can throw it.
Thanks. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. I talk pretty loudly anyway, so. So the target audience, that big chart that you showed, is that something that you worked on in the boot camp?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then do you find that this is useful in terms of prioritizing your development work and your roadmap?
Actually, it was very helpful to sit there and really get into the weeds of who we're really trying to target and who is going to benefit from it, who we're targeting for the value proposition, and what we're trying to bring to the table. So yes, this was a very helpful exercise to do.
And during the boot camp, did you guys talk about it all, like coming up with a release roadmap, or was that kind of like the next steps?
I would say we did some road mapping as well. I remember sometime, but it wasn't part of the pitch deck, but we did talk about it. And I think a lot of it was tied in with our goals of looking forward,
right,
and how we want to proceed and where we want to be at certain points.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I saw another hand. I just not sure.
wondering about maybe the last slide you had. You were saying you were running into a lot of issues moving data, your first data sets in there.
Mhm.
So as you're looking forward, right? 10 terabytes of data is not a huge amount, but it's a bit, right? How do you see that growing, and how do you plan to sustain that over time?
So right now, the 3D images come off in serial sections. So, and uploading directly from the microscope over to TAC servers. I think part of it is the infrastructure from the building aspect on the heart of the actual speed networking. And I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly. But to be able to sustain, the servers currently that we are using have a lot of data space, and we will be looking at archiving also. And
So I'm going to jump in,
yeah,
Anna Marie, sorry.
I'm not sure.
So as the boot camp participants know, we frequently interrupt and don't allow technical conversations. So, a big purpose of the boot camp is really for us to be talking about more of what we consider to be the business model. And how do you actually deliver this thing, and who's it for, and what's the purpose and the value that those people are going to get out of it. So, being in a room with a bunch of technical people and getting them to not talk about technology is in part of our challenge. So I'm going to encourage you guys to take that one offline and talk about it a little bit more individually.
Mine was actually a business question, right? 'Cause every brain scanning project I know, they double their data set size every 9 months, right? So from a sustainability, how are you guys going to stay in business with that kind of data growth over time? Is that something you've thought about?
If we have discussed it, I'm not quite sure. I wasn't part of those discussions, but that is definitely something I'm going to bring back to the table when I go back to the office. I'm just not quite sure right now how to answer that question. Sorry.
That's good. All right, thanks. All right, thank you, Anna Marie. All right, last up we have Cameron. I will put a little note in here for Cameron. One of the more challenging boot camp attendees in a really great way. I think you got good work out of it, right?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was great to, from the perspective of what I learned at the boot camp, it was great to think more about the business model than the technical. Yeah. As you mentioned, being a technical person, we become hyper-focused on those details. And so I learned a lot about, specifically things like whom our customers are potential to be. And I put it in my pocket. Sorry. So the gateway that I worked on, so similarly to Anne Marie, I had the experience of, I was working with people at TAC in order to build this resource. And then I learned from them that it was a scientific gateway. And then at boot camp, I learned even more why it was a scientific gateway, and that there's a lot of people that are trying to do something very similar to what I'm trying to do. So there's a lot of resources that are available. And I think that was one of the biggest benefits I got out of it. So NICloud, the NI part stands for neuroimaging. It's expanded to all of medical imaging now. And I haven't figured out how to change that because I already bought the URL. So we're working on that. But the basic idea is we kind of have this idolized, within the medical imaging community, we have this idolized dream of being able to kind of take our neuroimaging data, be it CT, PET, fMRI, MRI, whatever, and be able to stick it into the cloud or a high performance computing system at TAC and be able to produce these, gold bricks of science at a high at high throughput. And honestly, kind of the state of the art, and with advances in data science and some of the other techniques that we've heard about here, there's an increasing expectation that researchers in medical imaging use very computationally intensive methods in order to be able to do their research, right? The problem is the majority of these individuals are not trained to do that. So they spend a lot of their time, wrong button. They spend a lot of their time screaming at their computer, their tortured souls, And the goal of non-cloud is to eliminate that part of it. So hopefully we can take care of the computing so that the researchers can focus on the science part of it. So similarly, our value proposition is NiCloud will provide medical imaging researchers simplified tools for performing high throughput and reproducible cutting edge analyses of medical imaging data using high performance computing and cloud-based resources. We refine that a lot over it. I'm not sure it's the greatest. So I messed up on this part. This may be the challenging thing. So to me, left and up is the top. So the bottom axis is wrong. Maybe I could switch it with ease of use rather than required computing skills. I was thinking of it as like, you know, computing wizarding levels, CWLs, but whatever. So kind of the mainstream of what a lot of people do is down here in the green. So they have a single workstation where they do point and click analyses on it. And that allows them to be able to do their work with the skills that they have, but it's very low throughput, right? And when you start expanding the data sets to many more cases in order to be able to use these new computational methods, that just doesn't work anymore. So we could automate things on a workstation if we have those skills. We could do scripting, run the workstation all night, and get a little bit of a performance input. And with similar skills to that, we could use a resource like TAC and do high performance computing. And get even higher throughput, but even that can be a challenge for a lot of the users. And then of course we could do cloud computing like AWS, where you can get really high throughputs, but as you go higher and higher, the computational skills required for you to do it expand. So we're here in the golden ticket, NiCloud, where hopefully we can provide all of the same scalability and throughput that you could achieve in the cloud using, kind of what you're used to, the point and click interfaces on the workstation. So it's a very common problem. I think everybody's trying to solve this exact same problem, just for a different field. So the target audience, I didn't have here the full breakdown. And part of this, though, actually, this experience that I've gone through with the boot camp helped me expand this, and particularly to try to expand it past just neuroscientists. So when I was brought to the university here, the Dell Medical School, it was specifically to build a resource like this, this scientific gateway. We didn't know it was a gateway at the time, as I said before, but primarily it was to handle neuroscience. So cognitive neuroscientists as well as clinical psychologists, psychiatry, and neurology. But as I began to make better, stronger connections around the community and learning more about who uses medical imaging data on campus, I learned that also there's a lot of people in oncology, women's health, nutrition, as well that could take advantage of this. I've been looking for cardiology, but hearts are kind of a hard thing to translate to when you focus most of your time on brains. So, one of the issues with this is that, that's about 35 principal investigators. So that's kind of my initial target audience. Again, as I mentioned, this is an institution sort of funded project in the beginning, so maybe that's okay that there's only 35 investigators, principal investigators that are using it. If you were to expand it to the number of researchers that would be using it, maybe you would multiply that number by 5, right? But only 35 people are probably really paying the bills. So our early adopters are likely to be colleagues that are essential to the reason why the project started in the first place. So these are psychiatry, neurology, and also we've gotten a lot of buy-in from women's health. Eventually, and this is kind of a target, an idea that was developed more through the boot camp, was to be able to attach to clinical research organizations that are doing clinical trials. So these, the big money's in the pharma sector, right? So trying to get into there. And also I've been discussing with other institutions that have similar problems like Georgetown University and Nathan Klein Institute in New York. So those are other ways we're trying to get out to, multiply this 35 by the number of, research institutes out there. Hopefully we'll be able to do it. So the financial model, of course, grants and subcontracts are going to be, kind of a key part of it. And because our number one audience are researchers, even if we're asking them to pay, per case or to pay us a registration fee, there's still coming from grants, right? So a heavy part of our model is actually, being very proactive in this case, helping our researchers develop their grants and to try to help, boost that. As I mentioned, I got startup funds from the Dell Medical School. I'm learning that, about, the hiring process and kind of what promised things translate to when you actually get the job. And so the actually, what I thought was a relatively secure source of funding in the beginning has become a little bit more kind of a laborious thing to deal with. I've also been able to secure support from Livestrong, who's a very prolific cancer research organization. And as I mentioned before, hopefully we'll be able to expand into the clinical trial and drug research stuff. So here are the goals that I set at the end of the boot camp and the progress made. So there's no red X's because I figured, why punish myself, right? But so I decided early on that, through the boot camp, I learned a lot more about, what this had the capability of being. And I decided that I needed to learn more from the users, potential users, to find out what they had in mind about what it would be. So that I could, kind of reassess everything that I've been planning on. And so I've accomplished that. I've also came here to TAC and talked to them more about getting more support and interest. I had a talk here that went really well, and have been making those avenues. I wanted to kind of secure the department funds because I mentioned that had been a little bit problematic. So it hasn't fully happened, although funding has been released for my first 2 hires, which kind of translates to the 6-month goals, where I wanted to hire 2 research programmers so we could get started on this. But again, we're working on that. MOLVA is another organization. MOLVA is the Clinic for the Neurosciences. It's part of Dell Medical School. They are interested in helping fund this, so hopefully that'll work out. And begin submitting grants. So I got the first grant that'll fund a part of the development as well. So that's a green check. And we've probably, through my collaborators and people who will be potential users in the futures, we've worked in costs associated with this into 5 or 6 grant submissions. And that's everything that I have.
Okay, great. Questions for Cameron? So in my comment of Cameron being challenging, it makes my job a lot easier if everyone just drinks the Kool-Aid right away and goes along with it. But Cameron was really great about poking around and asking really good questions. And I think maybe he drank some of the Kool-Aid by the end, right? Maybe, right? Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to have a general open panel thing, but I have a question. So it struck me that when you go through the boot camp and you get these pitch decks, you get some really powerful clarity on what you need to do. But then sometimes, or perhaps these clarity may feel empowering, and other times it may feel overwhelming.
Mm.
And I wonder how you deal with that. And maybe also in addition, like you could be initially empowered, and as you take step forward, you'll run into breakdowns or issues. And how do you deal with that as well?
That's a great question. Yeah, sure.
So our project is, I didn't, for the pitch here, we really focused on some of the water and the water managers. So our project is, we have a lot of stakeholders and a lot of different pieces that the Gateway is going to touch. Like we have Native Hawaiian knowledge documents that are part of this project. We have microbial data and all these other things, but I really just focused on water, and we focused on the water managers. So we kind of identified that we had a lot of focus areas. And so we decided to divide that up into individual focus areas we could target with some of these things. So instead of getting overwhelmed because we're like, oh man, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do, we honed in on one group that we were gonna, focus on initially with this pitch deck and with some of our efforts, and then, divided those things sort of up into other value propositions for those different stakeholders for us. So that's kind of how we're dealing with that.
So we're actually running into the break time, so I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to get coffee and refreshments. But I encourage you to talk to the panelists throughout the rest of the day when they're here. Thanks, guys, so much for coming and presenting. Again, I hope the boot camp was useful. And if you have questions about the boot camp or the incubator, talk to the SGCI staff. We'd be happy to talk to you about it more. And hopefully we'll see you at one of the upcoming boot camps. All right, thank you. Thanks, guys.